If you are a fan of the strange, the dark, and the terrifying, you are in the exact right place. Dim the lights, lock your doors, and let's get into today's stories. Story 1. The Predator in Uniform. On the freezing, pitch-black evening of December 29, 1986, a California Highway Patrol officer named Craig Pyer was driving his cruiser down Interstate 15 in San Diego. But on this particular night, he wasn't alone. Sitting in the back seat was an NBC News reporter, and up front in the passenger seat was a cameraman. They were filming a special news segment on highway travel safety, scheduled to broadcast to hundreds of thousands of living rooms later that very night. As they cruised through the darkness, they passed an exit sign illuminated by the headlights. Mercy Road. Officer Pyer turned to the news crew. His face completely, utterly calm, pointed a finger at the pitch-black exit, and muttered, "That's where they found the body." Just 36 hours prior, the lifeless body of a 20-year-old college student named Kara Knott had been discovered dumped in a dry creek bed near that exact exit. She had been on her way home from her boyfriend's house. No one knew why she had pulled off the dark highway into an isolated cul-de-sac. But what was certain was that she had encountered a monster in the dark. Someone had brutally beaten her, strangled her, and thrown her away. Her killer was still out there, roaming the streets. And that was exactly why NBC was doing this segment, to warn young women about the dangers of pulling over on isolated stretches of highway. As the camera rolled, Officer Pyer stared directly into the lens and delivered a chilling warning. He said, "Once you stop, there's an inclination to want to leave your vehicle. But that's a very dangerous thing to do. Anything can happen. Being a female, you could be raped, robbed, all the way to where you could be killed." He strongly warned the public never to get into a stranger's car, fueling the local theory that Kara had been lured into the vehicle of her murderer. Just moments later, Pyer spotted a stranded motorist on the shoulder of the highway. Seeing a perfect opportunity for live television, he pulled over, stepped out into the night, and approached the driver. The man had run out of gas and walked in the dark to a station. On camera, Officer Pyer reprimanded the man, lecturing him on how dangerously he was acting. After the perfect, seemingly heroic display of police work, Pyer called a tow truck, and the news crew wrapped up their night. When the minute-and-a-half-long segment aired on the nightly news, the police department thought it was a massive PR success. It was just a routine safety video. But out in the suburbs of San Diego, a cold, suffocating terror was sweeping through the living rooms of nearly 24 women. As these women watched the broadcast, their blood ran cold. Within an hour of the segment airing, the police department's phone lines began to ring endlessly. Frantic, terrified women were calling in, all repeating the same unbelievable claim. "I know who killed Kara Knott. He's on my television right now." Over the past year, nearly 24 young women had been pulled over at night on that exact stretch of Interstate 15. They had been terrorized, harassed, and held against their will in the dark by a rogue police officer. They had survived. Kara had not. When these survivors saw the NBC broadcast, they recognized his voice. They recognized his face. And most chillingly, they noticed a fresh, deep scratch directly over his right eyebrow. A defensive wound, left by Kara Knott in the final, desperate moments of her life, as she fought the man meant to protect her. The man giving safety advice to the public on how to avoid a killer was the killer himself. Officer Craig Pyre was arrested, convicted of first-degree murder, and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, where he remains to this day. If you enjoyed these dark, mysterious, and unbelievable true stories, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, so you never miss our weekly descents into the unknown. Leave a comment down below, letting me know which of these 3 photos you found the most haunting. Until next time, stay safe out there. Story 2. The Final Frame. At 1 p.m. on November 28, 1979, the atmosphere inside Air New Zealand, Flight T-901, was nothing short of magical. A 52-year-old tour guide named Peter Mulgrew stood at the front of the aircraft's cabin, a microphone in his hand. He looked out the window at an endless, blindingly white landscape reflecting the harsh afternoon sun. He keyed the microphone and announced to the 237 passengers on board that they had officially reached the frozen edge of the world. They were flying over Antarctica. The cabin erupted into cheers. This wasn't a standard commercial flight where passengers were ordered to stay in their seats. This was an exclusive, luxury sightseeing flight. The passengers unbuckled their seatbelts, excitedly grabbing their heavy cameras, and began moving freely about the cabin to get the best possible angles of the ice below. Peter, a seasoned veteran of these Antarctic tours, knew exactly how to direct the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice echoed through the cabin, "if you look out the left side of the aircraft, you'll get a magnificent view of the Antarctic coastline." Immediately, a sea of people shifted to the left, pressing their faces and camera lenses against the cold glass. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing the vast, untouched emptiness of the continent. A few minutes later, Peter keyed the mic again. "All right, everyone. Now if you shift your attention to the right side, you will see Mount Erebus." Mount Erebus was not just a mountain. It was a massive, towering, active volcano, reaching over 12,000 feet into the sky. It was supposed to be the highlight of the trip. The flight path was designed to circle safely around it, giving everyone a perfect photo opportunity. As the passengers piled against the right side windows, raising their cameras to their eyes, Peter heard exactly what he expected to hear: gasps of sheer awe. The sheer scale of the volcano was breathtaking. But those gasps of awe instantly turned into screams of terror. Without a single second of warning, the massive airplane violently jolted. The deafening roar of grinding metal and shattering glass ripped through the air. If you look at the photograph associated with this story, you will see something truly haunting. It's a picture taken out of the passenger window. But smeared across the glass are thick, black streaks. Those streaks are engine oil and volcanic soot, because of a fatal navigation error and a terrifying visual illusion known as sector whiteout, where the white clouds and the white snow blend together seamlessly, masking the horizon. The pilots had no idea they were flying way too low. They hadn't flown around Mount Erebus. They had flown directly into the side of it at nearly 300 miles per hour. The photograph, with the black soot on the window, was recovered from the wreckage. It is widely believed to have been snapped in the exact, literal millisecond of impact. A fraction of a second after that shutter clicked, the plane disintegrated, instantly claiming the lives of all 237 men, women, and children on board. It remains the deadliest disaster in New Zealand's history. Story 3. The Poisoned Snow. The date was July 16, 1945. It was 5 a.m., and deep in the mountains of Ruidoso, New Mexico, a 13-year-old girl named Barbara Kent was fast asleep in a wooden cabin. She was attending a summer dance camp along with 9 other young girls. The deep, quiet night was suddenly shattered by an apocalyptic, booming sound. The shockwave was so violent that the very earth shook, literally throwing Barbara and the other girls out of their beds and onto the hard wooden floor. Barbara sat up in the dark, her heart pounding out of her chest. The 9 other girls were scrambling, crying out in panic. Before they could even process what had happened, their lead dance instructor burst through the cabin doors. Her eyes were wide with fear. She told the girls she thought the cabin's massive boiler or heater had just exploded, and that the camp might be catching fire. "Get outside," she ordered them. "Run down to the riverbank and wait for me there. Do not move until I make sure it's safe." Still wearing their nightgowns, the 10 terrified girls ran out into the pitch black July night. They stood shivering by the edge of the river, scanning the tree line for smoke or flames, but there was nothing. No fire, no screaming. Just an eerie, unnatural silence. As Barbara stood there, she suddenly felt something soft and freezing cold touch the tip of her nose. Then, something landed on her eyelashes. She looked up at the night sky and gasped. It was snowing. In the middle of July, in the blistering heat of the New Mexico summer. Thick, heavy white flakes were falling from the heavens. The panic among the girls instantly vanished, replaced by pure childhood wonder. They held out their hands, catching the flakes, laughing as the strange, powdery snow coated their hair and shoulders. Moments later, the instructor returned. She looked deeply confused, explaining that there was no fire, no explosion, and the camp was perfectly safe. Whatever that earth-shattering boom had been, it wasn't from the camp. But as she spoke, she noticed the snow. She, too, was mesmerized. It was a weather miracle. Seeing that the danger had passed, the girls begged their instructor to let them put on their bathing suits and go swimming in the river while the mysterious summer snow fell around them. Caught up in the magical atmosphere, the instructor agreed. For the next few hours, the girls splashed in the water. They scooped the thick white powder off the riverbanks, rubbing it on their faces, putting it in their mouths, and throwing it at each other. At one point, the instructor pulled out a camera and snapped a photograph. In it, you can see Barbara standing waist-deep in the water, looking up at the falling snow with a beautiful, innocent smile on her face. Eventually, the sun came up, the snow melted away, and the summer camp carried on as normal. The girls went back to their lives, believing they had witnessed a once-in-a-lifetime miracle of nature. It wasn't until 17 years later, when Barbara was 30 years old, that the horrific reality began to unfold. One by one, the girls she had gone to camp with began to get sick. Very sick. And one by one, they began to die from aggressive, unstoppable forms of cancer. Out of the 10 girls who danced in the summer snow that night, 9 of them suffered agonizing deaths. Barbara was the only survivor. For decades, the deaths were a mystery. It wasn't until the year 2006, when Barbara was in her 70s, that the U.S. government finally declassified the truth. The explosion the girls heard that night wasn't a boiler. It had occurred 40 miles away, deep in the New Mexico desert. It was the Manhattan Project's Trinity test, the successful detonation of the world's very first atomic bomb. The government had kept it a total secret. They had issued no warnings to the civilians living in the surrounding towns. When the bomb detonated, the massive mushroom cloud sucked up thousands of tons of dirt and debris, irradiating it, before blowing it across the landscape. The snow that fell on the girls that July morning, the powder they rubbed on their faces, caught on their tongues, and swam in for hours, was highly concentrated, weapon-grade radioactive fallout. When you look at that photograph of young Barbara smiling in the river, you aren't looking at a girl enjoying a summer snowstorm. You are looking at a child being bathed in a nuclear poison that would slowly and brutally assassinate nearly every single one of her friends. And while Barbara survived, her life was plagued by multiple bouts of cancer and severe illnesses, all stemming from that one terrifyingly innocent night in the radioactive snow